Community Highlights. Another local exclusive from Southeastern Michigan's news and information station, MonroeCountyRadio.com.
This is our town, the place we call home.
Welcome to This Is Our Town with Jeff Yorkey, a local public affairs presentation on MonroeCountyRadio.com. Brought to you by Allen Chevrolet Cadillac. All roads lead to Chevrolet. Here's Jeff Yorkey.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of This Is Our Town. I'm Jeff Yorkey, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And hey, I got a very special guest in our town today. It is the host of Monroe County Radio's very own The Real Deal. And here is The Real Deal, Trooper Stewart. Trooper Stewart, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, sir. I can't tell you how happy I am to be here. Actually, I'm honored to be here with you on your show and to share the mics with you.
Yeah, you got to. I heard you got to share the mic with my son the other day.
Jeff, it is something to behold when you bring Brett back and Brody's in here and you bring the three of us back together. It really is like bringing the band back together.
Right.
And Michelle took her hands off the wheel, gave us the keys, and we just drove this thing like it was no tomorrow. Yeah. We had a great time with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and Brett did too because he came home and we talked about it, and he had a fantastic time, and I thought that was cool because I knew he really wanted to come here. I knew he wanted to see you, he wanted to see Michelle, so that was cool. You know,
it really is,
and Brody too. Brody, he wanted to see you too. Trust me. Have you guys ever met, Brody? You guys have met. Okay, I wasn't sure because sometimes I look at him. And I go, man, I see Brett in him, right?
Like 3 years ago, right?
I know, isn't that
exactly.
crazy?
Like when I first walked through the door, I think the same thing.
Right.
Except
for the nose ring.
Yeah, except for that. But they both have really sweet hair, and I got to tell you, I'm a touch envious of that. And we might have touched on that a little bit on the show as well. But I look at him, I see your day's coming. Kid, your day's coming. Enjoy this. Take a lot of pictures because your day's coming.
Yeah, right. It's funny. I was. It must be something about the state police post because you and I did. We did this thing at the community college the other couple weeks ago, and it was a training for the criminal justice department over there, and it was a lot of fun. But I remember at one point we're all sitting in one room, and I forget who it was that was doing the training at the time. But be that as it may, there's a whole bunch of troopers in there. A whole bunch of guys from the state police post. And the one thing that I noticed was I, of all people, had the most hair of anyone in the room.
It is something, and
I ain't got a lot of hair, guys.
Right, and we don't recruit that. I mean, it's not like one of the recruiting requirements, like, 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, absolutely bald, or hairless in some way. But yeah, no, we don't recruit it, but it does seem to catch up to you down the road, you know.
I know. Actually, I think Mark Moore might have had the most hair in the room.
Yeah,
and he doesn't have a lot of hair.
No, he doesn't.
He's got a nice head of it, but he keeps it short. But yeah, it's that is one thing about you guys is that no hair.
No, and we don't. I guess it comes with the territory, but one thing is we're not posers. So once you start seeing the gleam off the top, like that North Star, it's over. We don't play. Just get rid of it.
Just get rid of it. I know. I've been telling people I want to just shave it, just like yours. My wife says absolutely not. No,
she'll
way.
love it.
Yeah, I think so.
She'll
one
love
of
it.
these days I should just do
I'm
it.
telling you what, she'll love it, especially when it's sweet, shining, and smooth. I don't know what it is, but it's a draw.
It's that Jean-Luc Picard thing, right?
I don't know. It's pretty sweet. It is. I have to tell you, I love it.
Let's talk. I want to talk a little bit about the training that we did over at the college a couple weeks ago, and one of the reasons I want to touch on that is because, I was asked to do the legal part of this and talk to the kids a little bit about criminal law, criminal procedure, and things of that nature, and so I had to. It gave me an opportunity to sit back a little bit, prepare a PowerPoint and organize my thoughts about how I was going to approach this, and then as I did it and I taught these kids, I got to tell you, the one thing that I took from this, and I don't know if I told you about this or not, but I know I told a lot of the guys that I work with. I said, I have a much bigger respect than I even had before for cops and what you guys do, and I'm going to tell you why. We have the luxury of sitting in an air-conditioned office and picking at every little thing that you guys do out in the field. Right. I mean, that's and I know I've met plenty of calls where somebody calls and says, "Hey, what exactly was wrong with that search? There's nothing wrong with that search." And then you got to go through it and you got to talk about this and you got to talk about that. And, I told especially a lot of the younger people in our office, I said, you got to take something. If you can figure out an exception to the warrant requirement, or you can find or this or that or whatever, you got to put yourself in the shoes of one of those cops for a minute, because they have to make these decisions. We get to sit here and we can look through books and find out whether or not what they did was right or wrong. We get to think about it. We get to sit there and just contemplate, and then we draw this conclusion. They don't have that luxury. They have to make a split-second decision as to what they're doing out there. And this is one of the things that I've noticed, especially with the media, because cops are getting a bad rap right now, and it's all BS if you ask me. And if you would have sat in at my portion of the training, I think you would have come away with an entirely different perspective about what you guys do. Because I made it a point to those guys to think about this. We have the luxury of nitpicking every little thing that you guys do. You don't have that luxury. You have to make that call immediately. I was most impressed. We had, I think it was one of the city police officers came in during my presentation.
Young guy, it's probably Officer Tyson, because he helped out that blonde hair.
Yeah,
young.
It might have been him.
Yeah, that's him.
But he is. We're talking about exceptions to the warrant requirement, and he's ticking them off like that, just ticking them off. And I thought, you know what? That's pretty impressive. But you guys got to know that stuff, right?
Well, and that's the thing, that when you watch this stuff, especially here recently, and I'm not gonna comment on this current thing down in Akron, because I just can't. But the luxury is that folks at home, much like you said, and I really appreciate what you said, because we are all in this together, right? We really are, and sometimes we forget that as we're kind of holed up or niched up in our own little environments. But everything happens with us right now.
Yeah,
this is real time. It's happening, and it's right in front of you. We just lost a DPD officer the other night,
right?
And I read the response from his wife online. I don't know if you've seen that yet or not. Holy cow! But it is nice to sit here and have this moment to talk about this. That in the heat of the fight, in the heat of the moment, all this stuff is clipping along through your head, and a lot of it, and I have to tell you, now that I'm in the public relation arm, 25 years is enough. It really is. I look at these kids today, and they're all kids, and I think, man, your job's a lot harder than mine, because I rode with a senior guy on midnights, right?
Yeah,
that's just how it worked out, and I had the opportunity to learn from them, but it is right now, and there is no going back for instant replay. And there isn't taking the time to think about this, like, I wonder how many ways this could go as whatever this subject is planning or not planning. You don't have the option, and that's where folks seem to kind of get wrapped up in the emotion of it all, right? There's a million things going on right now. We have to make the right call at the right time all the time, because we do have a considerable amount of power up into the point where we can take a human life. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's necessary. And I think people have forgotten that we want to go home too. And so to hear that from the prosecutor side of thing, or even, talking to Dan Wood from the defense side, who you guys have been down that road on both sides, whether you're defending it or you're prosecuting it, you understand that there is a lot of time to reflect after the fact on Monday.
Yeah.
Well, Friday night, when this stuff is all going down, yeah, the cell phone did look like a gun, or the gun did look like a cell phone, right? So either I'm not going home, my partner's not going home. I've had 2 partners shot in the line of duty, and it's just one of those things that I think society has been groomed to the point via social media or the news or wherever they get their information to think that we have all the time in the world, and that we're robotic enough that we see it, we calculate it, and it's like a video game, right? We can see this thing all happening, and we can stop it, pause it, look at it, and then make the right call, when it really doesn't happen like that. And the one thing that I think people forget is it's easy to look 20/20 hindsight and say, I would have done – no, you wouldn't have.
Right.
No, you wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about, now these Milo simulators and all these other things that were and are being branded as de-escalation simulator. It's really just shoot, don't shoot, and critical thinking. Mm-hmm. Now do it under the heat of, okay, your life's on the line.
Yeah.
Right? And now make the right call 100% of the time. I just wish we were looked at like the meteorologists out there.
Right.
Hey, it's partly sunny or it's partly cloudy.
Yeah.
It might rain. It might not.
Right.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah. See you tomorrow. Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I don't. It's frustrating, man. I mean, we could go on and on. I could go on and on about the frustration of how people look at this stuff and don't look at it critically enough and don't put themselves. You know, when I was a kid, you were taught put yourself in somebody else's shoes. You know, if you really want to get an idea of what somebody's thinking, put yourself in their shoes. Put yourself in if you want their perspective. Think about yourself in their shoes, and if that's something that if you really would have reacted the same way.
Well, and you know, it's good that you were out. And first of all, thanks for being out there, because this has grown now already in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks since we put on the academy out there, to whether or not it's going to be an accredited course next year, because at 45 hours, that's 3 credit hours.
Yeah.
So now we're kicking that around. I know that I've talked to, I call him Director Wood because he really is the director of criminal justice out there knocking it around. And he gave me the ideas that you and Detective Peterson and he had come up with about formulating the whole curriculum in the same skeletal form, but around one case, so we can start showing the process.
Yeah.
And how really the process for a homicide case is really no different than a home invasion or a simple B&E.
Right.
It's just you take things out and you put things in.
Yeah.
But if you notice, not everybody was out there. And trying to get people to volunteer and get out of their paradigm and shift of what their thought is. For example, ride-alongs. Yeah. You know, we ride along. We can have ride-alongs with the public as far as like prosecutors or defense attorneys or business leaders. All they got to do is sign the waiver.
Yeah.
And I encourage that. You know how many people are knocking down our door, or the city's door, or the county's door, or any of the municipalities' door? None. Right? And that's the thing is, do you really want to see the truth, or do you want to live in your own version of it?
Yeah.
Right. And you know this from just prosecuting cases, is you get some horrible cases up there, and maybe the defendant's side of it, their family doesn't want to admit to the fact that, hey, your son, your daughter is fallible and they created this mess for themselves.
Right.
You know, and all these people that are up there saying what they're saying, yeah, they did this. And I know this sounds so utopian. Just admit up to it. Right? Man up or woman up to it and say, you know what? Yeah, I was fallible. I screwed up. I'll take my hit, whatever it comes. But to play the game out, and you're sitting here because the number one thing is everybody yells for justice. Define justice for me, first of all. And then we can get to the bottom line here, you know. Yeah. But yeah, the academy is great. I've had a ton of good feedback.
What exactly is it? Because I got a lot of people that approached me afterwards, and I was like, I'm surprised you didn't sign up for it. If you were interested in this, I had somebody that job shadowed the other day in our office, and I asked her. And she was I believe she was a senior, or she might have even been one of the fifth years that's going to the college. Didn't know anything about it. And I did my presentation for her in my office, just to give her an idea of what we were doing. And I was like, I can't believe you didn't know about this. You should have been there. It wouldn't have cost you a penny. But tell folks exactly what this was that Professor, I call him Professor Wood, put on over at the community college, and we participated in. Yep. Tell folks in a nutshell what it is.
So what it is for anyone that was interested in law enforcement, even if they had an inkling in it or they were curious, right? What's happening? I guess we should digress back to the whole how it came about. Right now, the criminal justice program at the Monroe Community College is the number 2 program behind their medical side, which is their nursing, respiratory therapy, x-ray, that kind of thing, right? And they've got 85 declared majors as of this end of semester, summer semester, for next fall. So what's happening is Professor Wood, Director Wood, Dan, has done a great job. And what this is just exposing the community to what is actually happening out at the college, also throwing it out to the college to say, hey, if you really want to know what the criminal justice process is all about and all the pieces that go into it, why don't you come out and check this thing out? Now, there were some communication errors, as it is always in the first year of things, you know, but we got some really good feedback. And so we took and we built a curriculum around every piece of the criminal justice program, and we thought of the uniform side where most people think criminal justice begins, ends, and it's like Judge Dredd, right? I'm the judge, jury, and executioner right here in uniform. But how small a part that really is. And then you have all after that decision is made, who do you call in from community mental health, the prosecutor's office, the defense, the detectives, the lab work, the fire, the EMS, all the way down to the simplest thing of, hey, I need a tow truck to get this car out of the road because it's blocking, right?
Yeah.
And how all of these critical processes are out there, but it all starts with that interaction with the individual and what the call actually was. We had dispatch out there. There was a shoot, don't shoot scenario that the sheriff department put on along with Bill McMullen, our troop that did our patrol scenario. So the students were given the ability I shouldn't say given the ability, they were put into classes starting early in the morning. And the way we formulated is much after our academy in Lansing. So we started in the morning with physical training, and they had to show up, and believe it or not, every one of them were early. Like from day one on, and I really put it to them the first day. And Detective First Lieutenant Mark Moore was out there and did a great job playing good cop to my bad cop, And that really is what happens in the academy or in the military and boot camp or anything is you got to break down the original product, mash it all together, work it all in like pottery, and then you build it up together as a team so that on Thursday when they ran their scenarios, they were working as a team. So it was PT first thing in the morning, and then it was structured into classes all day from defensive tactics to patrols to law to criminal investigation with Detective Peterson to the to the community mental health side of thing with Tara King. We had first aid given by Jeff Hayford over at MCA where they got Stop the Bleed, AED, and first aid training and were certified and all that. We had dispatch operations on how to talk on the radio, and what the radio ear actually is. We had some logistics training so they could find themselves around the map, by mapping out the college. We had a recruiting side of thing where we brought in fire, EMS, all the municipal agencies, community mental health, dispatch. So questions could be asked back and forth to each agency that was represented out there from these students. And, there were a few other things that we tossed in there.
Legal stuff.
As auxiliary stuff to this, to supplement this. So really in 4 days, they got a good taste of what we do at our academy. And this all culminated on Thursday, or day 4, where they ran scenarios all day long being dispatched to various calls that we had set up with our community members, different acting troops, different advocacy group members that played a part in this, along with the agencies.
Right. Hey, you know what? I want to cut you off right there because I want to talk more detail about that because I missed that part of it because I had to actually go back to work. And I got to take a break right now because we got a message from our sponsor over at Allen Chevrolet. And but when I come back, I'd like to talk more about those scenarios because I'd like to know how that played out because I think that was pretty cool. And I think that would really be something that if you're interested in any way, shape, or form in criminal justice, no matter what area of it, I think this was a great idea, and I'm looking forward to hearing how it ended right after this message from my good buddies over at Allen Chevrolet Cadillac.
When you're looking for a new or used vehicle, you want the best selection to choose from. Allen of Monroe is the largest volume Monroe County dealer with 300 new and used vehicles on their lot. That's way more than the other dealers. Allen Chevrolet of Monroe has been voted the best Monroe County dealer of the year for the past 3 years. When you want the best selection at a great price, there's only one dealer in Monroe County that delivers. Allen of Monroe.
All right, and we're back. And if you're just joining us, I'm here with Trooper Stewart from The Real Deal. And we've been talking about the academy that you guys put on over at the community college. And the first 3 days were all about classroom stuff, PT in the morning, getting used to every aspect from the time that a call is made all the way through to charging decisions by the prosecutor's office, trials, the whole business. We went from the entire gamut, and not just criminality, but also emergency stuff like car accidents and medical emergencies and all of that stuff. And then on the last day of the training, the 4th day, you guys went through a bunch of real life scenarios. In fact, you guys had a car that was crashed right there in the college, right?
Yeah.
And so how did all of that stuff? How did those students? Because I met all of them over the course of the couple of days that I was fortunate enough to be out there and help them through the legal side of everything. How did they respond, in your opinion? How did they do after that really abbreviated academy? How did they respond to the scenarios that were thrown out at them?
So I got to tell you, Jeff, it was really awesome to watch, because I gave them early on day one. I gave them the story of the butterfly. How a butterfly goes from that crawly little worm thing, right, the caterpillar, and turns into the butterfly, and how they learn to fly. And I said, you will too. And I said, it'll be your homework assignment, but you get to experience it firsthand, right? And for those of you who don't know how that happens, I learned this way back when I was younger and starting college. And it sounds funny, but it is true. It's through the adversity of getting out of the cocoon, right? Yeah. So they get in their little cocoon thing right there, and they pop out, and everybody thinks they just pop out with their wings.
Yeah.
And it's a violent act. It is a violent act with their struggle to get out of the cocoon. And it's the fact that they struggle through that small opening, pushing the blood from their body out to their wing to make their wing, to get that nutrient out to the wings to make them strong enough to fly. And if you help them, then the wings are underdeveloped and they crawl around. Of course, the birds from the air eat them. And I tried to explain that, but I said, I want you to read about this, and I want you to put it in context of about what you're experiencing through this, because the PT was the adversity, the defensive tactics was the adversity, the learning was the adversity, right? They had to experience that. They had to hurt. They had to go through this. And it sounds barbaric, but it truly is, that breaking down and making up. And then, of course, after all that culminates, and they were thrown into a lot of stuff. The one student is a fourth year over at Grand Valley.
Yeah.
And he told me this on the side. He goes, I didn't learn any of this in my first 3 years over there. The basic law, like your day one law with Dan, he said, I had heard that before, but the rest of it, this is all like out of the blue. So what was put on here is the equivalent of probably what he's going to get this year, I would hope, right?
Yeah, right.
And, that's the thing that was so cool about this. So what we did is we got together and we set up 12 different scenarios around the campus. So they had to learn, first of all, logistics and how to be dispatched to it. The first thought was to get them golf carts. And, of course, immediately liability popped up, right? Can you imagine if one of these guys got dumped? Oh, Lord. So they walked.
Right, yeah.
And so we set up 12 different scenarios. We got actors for each scenario. I brought some troops in that I had taught along the way that I really have a ton of respect for, because they're just really good troopers. Mm-hmm. Some advocacy members. Vicki Loveland was one that she played our overdose victim, or our greening out in the courtyard. So we had everything from a suicidal subject to a barricaded gunman to a verbal domestic to a physical domestic to a car wreck where everybody left. We had a mental health issue in one that was just an emotionally disturbed person. We had, and I think this is fine, Dan brought his sons in and his daughter. Yeah. His two sons suffer from autism on various scales. And we had which I have to tell you how much I learned from that. Right, and I'm 25 years in, but it was a family trouble, which happens, right? One or more of the children got triggered, and it just depended on what scenario they decided to play out at the time. Yeah. And they came up with their own scenarios. They got triggered. There was an argument that was ensuing, right? Obviously, this isn't a criminal matter. It's civil all the way around, but we still have to handle it.
Yeah.
And how we handle it is critical, right? We either trigger it more,
right,
or we de-escalate it to the point where there is a resolution that's peaceful, and that was the ultimate goal. So we had that. We had, we just had a suspicious person walking around who had a hood on, and I got that from one of the professors. I was meeting with Dan and Chris Henry over there as we're formulating this, and a call came out. One of the professors was walking around in a raincoat and had his hat on. And one of the students called in and said, there's a suspicious person walking around. We think he's up to no good. Well, it was this professor.
Right.
And so I use that scenario because apparently that's common at the college where, I guess for lack of a better terms, in a funny way, the Karens of the world immediately jump on the holy cow, panic. Right. They hit the red button.
Yeah.
And so we used one of my troop buddies to be the suspicious person over in the admin building who was looking for the registrar's office. but because he was lost, he appeared suspicious.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, just a suspicious person. They were going call to call all day. They were running. And then, of course, we didn't talk about this. There was a report writing element, right? Because that's how you get the information.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that. Yeah.
And I think that was the hardest part for them, is trying to take what they just experienced.
Right.
They came back to the pseudo post, which was a computer lab, and everything that we use as far as headings go in our report was on a document there, a Word document.
Yeah.
And they just had to fill in with the information they got. And I can tell you this, when I was giving my end of the program spiel at the end and telling the parents about it, I was tearing up. And I mean that because I had sold myself to this thing so hard.
Sure.
And the way that they developed, it was, we actually got a cadet potential out of this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So in other words, what you're saying is that we actually made a difference, right?
We made a huge difference.
I love that. I love that part of this whole
yes.
thing. I would have. I got it. You still have any of those reports? Because I'd love to take a look at them.
Dan has them all because
does he good?
Yeah.
Because I got to tell you, because we focused a lot on that stuff. There's this thing in the law called articulable suspicion.
Yes.
And I said articulable suspicion means just what it says. Articulate. You got to be able to articulate what it is that you're suspicious about. If you can't do that, it's not going to fly. It's not going to fly in court. So, and you guys are the first ones out there. You're the ones that see everything. You saw this scenario play out. You better be able to tell the prosecutor or whomever, the judge, the magistrate, you better be able to tell them why you're suspicious. You can't just say, well, the guy looked funny to me. That ain't going to cut it.
Right. That doesn't go, does it?
Yeah. You got to have more to it than that. You got to have a furtive gesture, or you got to have, right. You saw this happen. And then after that, you saw something else happen. And so they were able to articulate that stuff.
They gave it a good shot. It's not going to
be perfect the first time. Right.
And so we had our administrative assistant, Kyra Van Sluten, who red pens the heck out of stuff,
Yeah.
And so she was our squad room sergeant.
Yeah.
So they would print it off and she would red pen it and give it back to him. And, just like we do both back and forth from the prosecutor's office or from our sergeant's desk,
right.
We submit a report. If it doesn't meet the elements of the crime, it gets bucked back to us and said, hey, we need some follow-up. We need this. We got to answer a couple more questions to get to that. To that level where it's going to fly.
Good.
And they did a really good job. I thought the best thing about there were a couple things that really stand out now that we're talking about it is we had a debrief at lunch with all the actors and all the emergency personnel that were there. Mm-hmm. One of the emergency personnel said, I don't think it's right that we're running these kids to death like this and that sometimes they get dispatched by themselves. And one of my cubs kind of jumped in and said, well, we're not firemen and this is our day. This is what cops do every day.
Yeah.
And she just kind of, she kind of got her nose snipped, but I said, it is true. Yeah. I said, when you guys are sitting at the firehouse, and I said, this isn't a knock between cop and fireman like we like to do, it's just, we're running all day long. And in Monroe and Lenawee, it's not uncommon to come into shift and be anywhere between 4 and 12 down. And you just start picking them off one at a time as the shifts are changing over. So what we wanted to do is expose the students and the participants to what a day in the life is really like.
Yeah.
You're going to come in and some days it's going to be dead. What I mean? There's going to be nothing going on and you're going to be digging for something.
Right.
As much as a parking ticket.
Yeah.
Or you're going to come in and you are going to be running all day long. You don't get lunch. You barely have time to go to the bathroom and it's on to the next call and on to the next call. And so it was really, we got some really good feedback, but they did a really good job. One of the scenarios Vicki Loveland played is she came to from a greening out, and I don't remember which student it was, but he got on the radio and he's like, hey, send backup. She's moving. And so, and it's not uncommon to get calls where there are coppers out there that do kind of, step on it and they talk normal.
Right.
Right. And so we were giggling back in the squad room, laughing about that. But, one got a little sick to their stomach when one of the actors fake vomited.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so all of a sudden now we're dealing with a real medical because the participant's like, oh, Lord, I'm going to get sick. But these are the things that we want to expose them to, that this isn't pretty.
So we're going to do this again next year, right?
Well, yeah, and it's bigger already. Toledo has already reached out. TBD's reached out, and they want every one of their cadets to go through this.
Okay, cool.
And I'm like, holy cow. And then
that'd be awesome.
Huron Township said, hey, we got 26 or something like that, and we want them down here.
Yeah.
So that's where right now we are already starting our planning for next year. And I don't know if you got the email from the college or not. I know on the 26th we're meeting for our first get together, our first go around for next year already. A new flyer just came across my email today, and they're awesome. We're using the photos from this year.
Great.
And I'll fire one off to you. But the way that it's set up right now, this is going to be an ongoing every year thing, and it's going to get bigger and better every year.
Love it, man. Love it. Hey, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. It's just great being with you again. We've known each other a long time.
Yes, we have.
And to share the mics is just an honor for me.
It is. It's and for me as well. You do a great job out there, and just loved having you on.
Thank you, sir.
Good job, man. All right, that is unfortunately all the time we have for this edition of This Is Our Town. I want to thank everybody for listening. I'm going to turn it over now to my good buddy Bob Vergils as he goes bobbing around Monroe. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Join us every Sunday at noon and Tuesday at 7 p.m. for another edition of This Is Our Town with Jeff Yorkey, a local public affairs presentation on MonroeCountyRadio.com. Brought to you by Allen Chevrolet Cadillac. All roads lead to Chevy.
This is our town, the place we call home.